And now let's discuss one of our top stories, the recently made tweets of Prime Minister Modi and President Trump on the thaw in ties. We have with us Ambassador J.S. Mukul and Professor Harshvardhan Pant. Professor Pant is Vice President ORF. Ambassador J.S. Mukul has been a former senior diplomat. Welcome, both of you gentlemen, to the show. First, to Professor Pant, what would you say suddenly prompted President Trump to affirm the strength of US-India relations, calling the relationship very special, and describe Prime Minister Modi once again as a great Prime Minister?
Well, I think, it's very difficult to ascertain what drives President Trump's and his remarks. But in this particular case, it seems that there is perhaps some green shoots of a reset between India and China that are beginning to, between India and the US that are beginning to emerge. Because I think India's reaction from the very beginning has been very measured. But it's been the American officials who repeatedly have been on a harangue against India and targeting India in ways that are quite unprecedented. So I think that this seems to be an attempt by the US president to somehow reset the terms of public engagement, because the public discourse from the American side had really gone downhill. So it does open up an opportunity for the two sides to recalibrate the relations. And of course, Indian side has always maintained that this is an important relationship which India is willing to invest in. And the Prime Minister's response was clearly in line with that argument that Prime Minister himself, Foreign Minister, and the Indian MEA and the Indian government has outlined. So I think in some ways we can see that perhaps there is a rethink going on in Washington. But it's, again, with Mr. Trump, it's too early to say. So we may have to wait for a few days to see what the direction of this, where is the direction of this.
Indeed. Yes, it's going, considering the stances which he changes quite often. Ambassador Mukul, how would you read President Trump's statement that there is nothing to worry about regarding bilateral ties between India and the US?
Well, first of all, I think per se, and on the face of it, it's a very positive development, and obviously responded to appropriately and adequately by the Prime Minister. But as the saying goes, one swallow does not make a summer, and therefore it remains to be seen whether this will continue, and more importantly, not just President Trump in one interview, but also his senior colleagues who have been frequently making anti-India tirades, whether they will tone down and step back from this continuous carping and insulting which has been going on.
Yes.
So as I said, if this is based on a review, a reset, on deep analysis of policy, then this U-turn is very substantive and very welcome. But as we know, sometimes this can be tactical, whether it is, so we need to wait and see whether this is to throw off balance the interlocutors and the adversaries, so to say, in the negotiations, and try to put them under pressure. So that is something that remains to be seen. But on the face of it, yes, it's a very good change. And hopefully a U-turn which is based on a substantive review of their policy and posture towards India.
Okay, Professor Pant, just following the statements by President Trump and Prime Minister Modi, can we expect the restoration of a greater degree of positivity and normalcy from here onwards?
I think, again, let's wait and see what the others also say. But yes, I think the tone is often set by the top leader, and particularly in this administration, whatever Mr. Trump says, that is parroted by others. So clearly, if he's indicating a change of tone and a change of tenor and a change of approach towards India, and again to be seen over the next few days, I think, and to be followed by others as well, certainly it opens up a possibility of a fresh engagement, a fresh set of eyes, a fresh set of effort towards concluding an important trade agreement, and towards also somehow, a public mood in India has soured against the US. There is a public sentiment that is increasingly against Mr. Trump and the US at this point. And I think this is a good beginning in terms of the public, repair of the damage that Mr. Trump and his advisors have done by repeatedly targeting India and going against India and talking in a language which is quite unprecedented. And I think that would require some time, that would require some effort from the US side. It is not going to happen with one statement. So we will have to wait and see what others also say in his administration. And if this is a positive start, then certainly one can also hope that there is an understanding in the US as to the damage that Trump administration has done to what was considered to be very robust relationship with the US across successive governments, across successive administrations in Washington and in India. So I think Mr. Trump has therefore, if he has decided to put the relationship back on track to go for a more forward-looking positive agenda in India-US relationship, then certainly it opens up new avenues, and it also begins to repair some of the damage in the public sentiment that has been done. But again, it's too early to say.
Professor Pant, you've talked about Indian sentiment. What about the American sentiment? Do you agree that Americans, by and large, realize that India was chosen unfairly to be the target of tariffs for importing Russian oil? Of course, there are commentators like Oprah Winfrey who have, vehemently said that there is a turnaround now. India has forced US to rethink on its policy. So is Trump's team only making India the new front line of politics here?
I think there is at least in the policy circles, at least in the political circles, there had never been an anti-India sentiment. And the idea that different administrations, different governments had invested in this relationship speaks to the fact that this was a bipartisan initiative, India-US relationship, and Mr. Trump has damaged that sentiment. And I think, but where in some ways some damage has happened is in the MAGA base of Mr. Trump. There is certain resentment against India because they feel that Indians are taking away their jobs. Indians are in very critical sectors of the economy. So there is also an inherent racism that has come to light in recent statements by some of the MAGA members and the base of Mr. Trump. So I think he also, when he speaks now, will have to repair that aspect as well, because that can also do damage to India-US relationship. But by and large, I think if you look at the intelligentsia, if you look at the statements of political leaders across political aisle, across the divide in the US, they recognize the damage that is being done with these statements, and they recognize the importance of India. But how do you ensure that an administration as unpredictable and as volatile as Mr. Trump adheres to some of those basic norms and parameters is the real question here.
Okay. Ambassador Mukul, would it be fair to say that for any country to maintain good relations with President Trump and therefore with the USA requires, among other things, treating him with kid gloves? Also, is that always practicable?
Well, actually, we have been practicing in response to a lot of provocation, uncalled for provocation, a very restrained, a very patient, and a very measured and calibrated approach. And that, I think, was also seen in the Prime Minister's response today, and the External Affairs Minister and the Ministry State spokesperson there. We are not going to be enthused by just one statement. And that, I think, came, of course, it was adequately and appropriately responded to by that. But you're right, one has to be careful. That goes back to this issue of conducting diplomacy through the social media and through tweets. That is always a risk there of things getting out of hand. So one needs to wait and see whether this sentiment which has been expressed today translates and translates into further statements of the nature positive and percolates down to his other associates who have been making all kinds of unfair, unjust, and factually incorrect statements against India and its leadership. So that is something that remains to be seen. But yes, you're right, we need to treat, but we have been, our diplomacy is mature. is very professional, and I think from the very beginning we have had a very measured, a patient, and a calibrated approach towards the United States, despite the provocations.
Okay, very quick comment from both of you gentlemen. Ambassador Mukul, you can go first. From at this stage, from here onwards, what will it take to restore the harmonious India-US relationship?
Well, in my view, this is a good first step, but much more needs to be done. First, as I said, this needs to translate widely in terms of the rhetoric that is coming out of the United States. Secondly, in substantive terms, I think this needs to be followed up. There is India and United States have a comprehensive and global strategic partnership with a very substantive agenda. And there are a large number of issues which are on the table, and that will remain to be seen. There is the Quad Summit coming up later this year, whether that and all the other three members, India, Japan, and Australia, have agreed to attend, whether the United States joins, the President Trump is willing to come to India. That will be a good measure. There is also the other issues relating to the United States itself, and of course the 25% penalty or sanction due to the import of Russian oil needs to be withdrawn, because that is needs to be withdrawn immediately, and thereafter the trade deal could be discussed with regard to the tariffs on trade issues. But this 25% which was imposed is completely unacceptable. So that needs to be. So these are the gestures that will take this forward. Also, there have been many statements with regard to the H-1B visas and the treatment of the Indian American community. Now, how that pans out. So there is, as I said, a very big substantial and substantive agenda in the US-India relations, and all those things will have to be looked at. We understand that there are legitimate concerns on the part of the United States, as there are on our side. And I think I would believe that going back to the traditional diplomacy of quiet diplomacy, the conventional type of diplomacy, rather than conducting relations, foreign relations through tweets, is a much better way and a much more productive way going forward.
Professor Pant, your concluding thoughts, please.
Yes, I think a certain degree of restraint in the tone in which America has been addressing India is important, is required to build public trust that America is certainly not gone rogue. And I think in some ways the language is important. And as Ambassador Mukul was saying, it is important that diplomats are allowed to do their job behind the closed doors, because at this point, everything that is being done by Mr. Trump, he revels in the fact that he does it through social media and directly talking to the to the media in public. I think that has done a lot of damage, because that has amplified the problems that have been created in this relationship. So I do think that a certain degree of restraint is important, a certain degree of respect for Indian point of view, and how India has been a very, very responsible player throughout needs to be acknowledged. And I think given the enormity of the relationship and the importance of the relationship, there is no reason why both sides should not be building this relationship and taking this relationship forward. So I think all that is needed is a bit of restraint from the American side and a bit of diplomatic tactic. You would think that that's easy to come by for diplomats, but it seems at this point in time, it is
Okay, let me put it this way. It's time to go back to dependable diplomacy. Of course, what Trump is doing is damage diplomacy, probably at the moment. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us on DD India News. Professor Pant and Ambassador Mukul, thank you for being with us on the show.